With the 2024 NASCAR season fast approaching, I thought it would be appropriate to give my thoughts on who's under the most pressure going into this upcoming season. These are the drivers I feel have a lot on the line and a lot to prove in this upcoming season as a whole. Now, when it comes to the title of this video, what I mean by the 2024 NASCAR hot seat drivers, I'm not specifically stating that these guys are going to lose their jobs or they're going to be out of rides if they have one bad season coming up this season. That's not necessarily what I'm stating. What I mean is from a mental standpoint, that mentally for these guys, the things they need to accomplish in terms of their performance, if they don't get it done this year, mentally, I feel like that'll be a really, really big, tough uphill battle for them to climb in the years to come if they don't do something this year upcoming. That's what I mean. So I don't want people to think that this list is more so based off of, oh, well, if this guy doesn't perform well, he's not going to make it. He's going to be fired from his job. No, I'm just specifically stating from a mental standpoint. That's it. Now, starting off when it comes to trucks, I got to start off with my boy Chase Purdy. Now, a guy who was on my list for the disappointments video that I came out with a couple weeks ago. He's a guy who statistically improved in his first year with KBM after moving on from Artori Racing Enterprises, but not as much as I expected him to improve jumping into a top-level ride like KBM. Because outside of a couple poles last year, he didn't show great pace all year, and he only managed to get 3 top 5 finishes this past season, and he only led 23 laps. Hopefully with a full year of KBM underneath his belt with that team, he'll be able to take a huge jump in performance this upcoming season. I'm expecting big things because they don't allow you to sit in these KBM trucks for long if you're not going to produce. He's got to show up and show out, especially in a series that's got a lot of newcomers, a lot of young talents, and a lot of old veterans in it. He's going to need to produce if he wants to stay in that ride and continue to progress in his NASCAR career. Now, moving on from Chase, I got to talk about a guy who was more so on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to attention and notoriety and expectations, and that's Tyler Ankrum. He's a guy who was on my disappointments video earlier last month, who I thought really had a disappointing year compared to where his expectations should have been going into that 2023 season. Now, going into 2024, with him starting with MHR, a new team, he's definitely going to have to produce and show that he can perform better than he has the past 3 seasons. The 2 years with Artori Racing Enterprises were not very good. Hopefully with MHR, he is able to produce at an elite level. Or not an elite level, but a better level than what he's produced the past 3 seasons. I'm not looking for him to go out there and win 4 or 5 races or even 2 or 3 races, but just go out there and show pace most of the year and perform and show that you can be a top driver in the trucks. Otherwise, he's going to be stuck down there for the foreseeable future. Hopefully I'm wrong, though. I really like him. I think he's a blue chip type of driver who really could do something if he gets up to the Xfinity side and maybe be a contender one day. And when it comes to the last person, when it comes to the trucks, that really is more so an obvious pick, but it's somebody who just has all the tools but needs to put it all together to be successful, and that's Nick Sanchez. He's another guy I like, a guy who has a lot of potential, who was really touted coming out of ARCA Series, even though he faced a skeleton level crew down there in the ARCA Series when he won the title. But he's got a lot of pressure on him to perform down here when it comes to trucks, especially in his second year. I'm expecting a lot of big things from him. I'm expecting him to perform at an elite level. Knowing that Red Racing is a technical alliance with Kyle Busch Motorsports, he's going to obviously be in a competitive truck compared to what he's been in since he was down in ARCA. Even though he was in the same truck last year, he showed that he could have speed, as he had 5 poles last year. So hopefully he can carry that same speed into next year. I think if this guy can somehow win a championship in the truck series and move up, he could possibly in the next 3-4 years be a cornerstone for a cup team in the future. But you never know. I could be flat out wrong, like I said in the past. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I'm right, because I really like him as a driver. Now, when I look at Xfinity, if I was making a list of the top drivers in Xfinity series that need to step up and perform at a high level in 2024, Sheldon Creed would be on the top of the list. Here's a guy who's moving on from RCR and moving to a team with better equipment and a team that's going to be centered around him compared to playing second fiddle behind Austin Hill, this is going to be his best opportunity to produce at an elite level. 2 years into his Xfinity career, and he's yet to win a single race still. Definitely not what I expected of him since he moved from trucks with GMS to RCR a couple years ago. But he now has a fresh start with a great team in Joe Gibbs Racing, and he's going to need to show that he can produce in a top-level ride. Otherwise, he'll fall on a long list of drivers and a long line of drivers who became what-ifs in the sport because they couldn't get it done. He's still relatively young at 26 years old, but he needs to start showing what people around the Southern California area saw in him when they nicknamed him the Showstopper. Now, moving on, when it comes to another driver I believe has a lot of potential that's sitting in the Xfinity Series right now, who's really got a really big year coming up, in my opinion, and that's Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith had a really good 2023 season, or decent season with Colleague Racing, winning a race at Richmond early in the season and having 8 top 5s and 13 top 10s with 3 poles. He had a solid year. But moving on to Joe Gibbs Racing, a better team compared to Colleague right now, and a better ride, especially with a guy who has the potential that he has, I'm expecting big things from him. I'm expecting a multi-win season. I'm expecting him to be a championship contender this season. I think he has a lot of potential, so the pressure is going to be on. He's got to perform. He's got to produce. He's young, but if you want to really step up and perform and be getting to the next level when it comes to Cup, he's going to have to show that he can perform in an Xfinity level ride, just like how Sheldon Creed needs to perform. We'll see what happens. Now, when it comes to the last person I have on the Xfinity side of the table, I got somebody that gets a lot of leeway from the fans, somebody that people give a lot of praise to, who hasn't really been able to perform, and hasn't really shown the ability to be able to perform the past 3 seasons in trucks, and that's Hailie Deegan. Now, I know pitchforks and all of the girl power people stand down for a second. The only thing I'm stating, I really like Hailie Deegan. I got a lot of respect for her. I'm one of those type of people that believe that she can perform at an elite level in any series when it comes to Xfinity or Cup. She'll immediately become the biggest star in the sport, bar none. But when you look at the 3 years she's had down in trucks with DGR and with Thorough Sport, she hasn't been able to show that she can produce. Most of the time she's getting, even the best finishes she's gotten last season were basically based off of attrition, not based off of pace. And with her moving to a team like AM Racing, that's really a decent car, it's not terrible, she's going to have to show that she can produce. Everybody's made all the excuses in the world for her for not being able to produce because of the truck series and how much mayhem it causes. Well, here you go. You got an opportunity in Xfinity, a Cup ride with a team that's centered around you. You got to show what you can do. It's put up or shut up really for her in the biggest way possible. She's got to produce. Because at this point, you don't have the age excuse no more. You've been racing for 3-4 years. You don't have the excuses of anything else. Of you not having a good equipment, about the series, nothing like that. At some point, you gotta look yourself in the mirror and say, I have to produce, I have to step my game up and show that I belong in NASCAR. We'll see what happens. I'm rooting for it, but you never know what might happen. I could be flat out wrong, but we'll see. Now, moving on to Cup, I gotta start off with a guy who may shock a lot of people for being on this list, and that's Mr. Alex Bowman. Now, I know in terms of his position with HMS, he's not under any pressure at all, as it seems. He signed a 3-year extension last year to remain with HMS through 2026. But for me, knowing how well his teammates have performed the past 3 years compared to him, the clock is ticking. I would suspect that these next 2 years will be a measuring stick on whether or not he'll be with HMS beyond 2026. Because if you look at his last 2 seasons in the past, he's really regressed in terms of his results when compared to his best season in 2021. He's got to find a way to get back to that 2021 form, as he's kind of getting left in the dust by his teammates in terms of performance. William Byron had his best season of his career this past year, and Kyle Larson is coming off another really good stellar year in his own right. And even Chase Elliott, who missed a chunk of the 2023 season because of an injury, returned and had a stellar rest of his season. With Bowman being 30 years old, the clock is ticking on his prime as a driver. He's going to have to produce and do it now. Now, moving on, I'll be honest. Heading into the 2023 season, I gave Daniel Suarez a lot of leeway because of how he performed in the 2022 season with Trackhouse basically saving his spot on the Cup roster. But seeing as he didn't have a good year in his sophomore season with Trackhouse, the clock is ticking on him as well, as he needs to respond with a multi-win season this year to keep his ride, in my opinion. 3 top 5s, 10 top 10s isn't going to cut it sitting in a top ride like Trackhouse provides him. With Ross Chastain basically mirroring what he did in 2022 last year, the pressure is most certainly on Daniel Suarez to match what Chastain has done in the same level of equipment the past 2 years. Seeing as he's 32 years old, the last semblance of his driving prime is fast approaching. He needs to capitalize or he may find himself out of a cup ride in the near future. Now moving on, I know if most people looked at this list on paper before they watched this video and saw that Denny Hamlin was on it, they would be scratching their heads asking a whole lot of questions. They would say, well, he finished 5th in points. He had another multi-win season. What the hell is he doing on this list? And my retort would be, it's not about what he necessarily does in the regular season. It's about more so what he does in the postseason when it comes to winning a championship. Think about it. This man has been racing full-time in Cup for 18 plus years now and has seen different formats, different point systems, different cars, different generational drivers, and his performance hasn't dropped off majority of his career, and I commend him on that. But seeing as how drivers from his generation like Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, and even to a lesser degree Tony Stewart have all won championships while he hasn't, I know it eats at him deep down inside. Hell, even rivals of his like Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski have walked away with titles. And at 43 years old, coming off of shoulder surgery, Denny Hamlin is staring the end of his NASCAR career in the face. He'll more than likely continue to perform well in terms of his statistics over the next few years, but retiring without a championship would hit him as bad as Charles Barkley not winning a championship. He can have all the opinions and the thoughts he wants on his podcast, but when it comes, and he could talk about how bad the format is right now, why, and give excuses all he wants. And I more than likely would agree with that when it comes to his sentiments about that. But I know deep down inside he wants to finish his career with a championship. The clock is ticking. This may be his last legitimate chance to win this upcoming year. The pressure is on. Now there you have it. These are all the people that I have on my list that I feel need to produce in the 2024 upcoming season. I like most of these people on this list. A lot of these people on this list are on here for different reasons. Some are on here because of their performance in the past couple years in terms of not being able to produce at a high level. Some are on here because they haven't been able to produce in a top level ride. Some are on here because they haven't been able to produce at all. I like a lot of these drivers, but 2024 is really a put up or shut up type year. It's feeling like that in the world, and it's feeling like it's going to be like that when it comes to NASCAR as a whole. A lot of these guys got a lot to prove. Some when it comes to the championship, some when it comes to just regular performance. Hopefully, I don't have to talk about these guys when it comes to the end of the NASCAR 2024 season. But when I really think about it in my own heart and my own brain, it wouldn't shock me if I see half of these guys back on the list next year. Or on the disappointments video eventually. But we never know. But I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, until we meet again.